What's up guys, here at Lake the Ozarks, and today I'm going to talk about docks. So you look around Lake the Ozarks or any other lake you're at, but especially here, docks everywhere, every direction you look, nothing but docks. So oftentimes you can hear people say during a tournament, you know, how did you catch them? Well, caught them off docks. And someone else say, well, I fish docks too and I didn't do any good. You know, what's the big deal? What's different about what you and I are doing? So docks as a whole is you could consider it as a pattern, but there are so many differences and little variations in all of it that it's finding a pattern within a pattern and then replicating that. So for instance, say you're fishing docks in less than 10 foot of water in the back third of a cove with a little bit of shade and maybe a little bit of wind hitting on it, something like that. And if you can find a pattern where you can replicate that and you keep getting bites on the same thing, well, now you've turned this entire lake that's got who knows how many thousands of docks, and you can just roll to the docks, you know, that fit the description, the patterns you got going on there. I'll just kind of go over a little bit of that today. Some things that I like to look for both above the water, and then we'll go below the water using electronics and things like that to help you catch more fish. So first thing I'm looking for is just general appearance and maybe the type of boat that's in there, or any rod holders. If you see rod holders on like these front edges or anywhere around the dock, there's a really good chance that there is a brush pile nearby, and you should take the time to either flip over there or live scope or something and see what you see. People, they can sink brush around any dock. It doesn't have to be the homeowner that sinks the brush. Someone could drive by at night or during the day and drop a brush pile off by your dock. You know, as long as it's in the water, they can do whatever they want. So really, you're just looking for anything that's trying to set that dock apart. Like this dock here is not in really good shape. If it's a really old dock and it's been there much longer than the rest, and the floats and stuff have a lot more algae on them, that can attract more bait fish. But that's just something to kind of keep in mind. So when you're looking at different types of docks, they're pretty much all floating docks here, because Lake the Ozarks fluctuates, you know, several feet from winter to summer pool. So you don't really have any of the stilt docks like they do in some of the southern states. But you do have different types of walkways or catwalks, whatever you want to call it here. So sometimes they'll just have a float like this if they're short. You know, say this was only from the float to the bank, that's all you would have. But since this one's really long and they don't have extra floats, they actually have these steel beams on this one. So anything like that is extra cover. The fish can slide up in there real shallow and sit on there. It's just another little ambush point for them. You'll also see some like this, which is bridged a lot further. So they have the one float coast at the dock, and they have the same steel beams back here. So when I see these type of floats and things like that up on the backside, oftentimes I'm going to try and pitch all the way up underneath the walkway, over top all these cables, like in this circumstance, because the cables are pretty low. So if you did catch a fish, you can horse it out over top everything. At least get it to this cable if you have to, flip it over or net it, do whatever. But I'm looking to put my bait in areas that other people can't, or not necessarily that, you know, it's so hard that you can't put your bait in there, but maybe a place that people don't want to put their bait in there because they think, oh man, if I do catch a fish, you know, how am I going to get it out? Sometimes it's better just to flip in there and go for it. And if you do hook one, just try and wrestle it out the best you can, or get in there to net it. So sometimes that's a little bit better approach, you know, than trying to be super cautious and not putting your bait where you think the fish are. So now another type of walkway, these are usually quite a bit older, but there are still a fair amount of them here, is these old concrete supports. I really like these in like the winter time and stuff, because it holds heat. I think the sun in the winter heats these up and it kind of holds heat and the fish get on them real close. But still good in the summertime, and you know, just pitch around them. I'm once again looking for shade, trying to get close to cover, basically just an ambush point. When you're fishing docks, ideally, you want the sun to be out. That will help you pinpoint the fish in a much smaller area on the dock. And basically you're looking for the darkest shade on the dock is where I'm gonna try and put my bait all the time. Sometimes that would be back here in the pockets of the slip, depending on, you know, the exact time of the day and where the sun's at. Sometimes this one doesn't have real good floats up front here that have a gap. sometimes there's a gap like right in between here, and you can pitch up in there as far as you can. And then you have all these boat lifts. So boat lifts all over the place on the lake and all these docks. And flip up under there as far as you can, skip under there as far as you can. The further the better. And oftentimes you can get some fish out of there. So you basically just, you know, with the sun high, you're looking for the shady spot of the dock. Now, wind. If you have wind coming across the dock, I like to fish the windy side first. Always trying to, like here, the wind's kind of coming in and hitting this front section a little bit, or even the front outside. I would call this the front. I'd call this the back of the dock. I'm always going to try and fish the windy portion first. There are days where you're only getting bit on the windy side, and the windy side butts up to the shady side, kind of like here. You got some shade here, and you got the wind coming to it, so cool. This is where I'm going to want to fish. Maybe even the front a little bit where the wind's coming in on the shade there too. But other times, they're backwards. You have the wind hitting the sunny side, and it's slack water on the shade side. Sometimes it seems like they actually bite better out of the wind on the slack water side than they do in the wind. So that's something you just kind of got to play around with day to day. Basically with all this is you'll find something, and sometimes the pattern will hold up for a while, and then it seems like whatever you had figured out is totally gone, and you got to restart and figure it out. So that's kind of the beauty of it here at Lake the Ozarks, though, is once you do get something figured out, it's really easy to hop around and keep it going. All right, now that's basically the things you can see above the water with your eyes and, you know, start to develop a pattern like that. Now, the next thing is using the technology, which would be side imaging or live scope or anything like that. So if you have side imaging, first thing I'm gonna do is just drive down the row of docks, around the front of them. I might drive all the way through here and start marking brush piles. That's mostly what you're looking for around docks, is brush piles. Now, there are some other little sneaky things you can look for. Sunken lifts, other parts of the docks, like sometimes these docks had fallen down in an ice storm or snowstorm, and you got actual little metal pieces in the water. Fish can congregate on that, any type of cover. But something that I think a lot of people tend to overlook is bottom composition. A simple bottom change. You go from a hard bottom to a soft bottom, and you get a dock that's positioned right on like that change. That can just hold fish really just for the bottom composition, but then the dock is just an additional piece of cover for them to kind of relate to. So those are things that I'm looking for. Now I'm going to show you some brush piles. Actually, I have a bottom change over here that I'm going to just show you, what I'm looking for on the graph. All right, now when I'm graphing, I'm just, 15 feet maybe center of the boat away from the docks, and I'm just cruising on along. And then this is all, that's how I got my screen set up. I've got side imaging set to 50 foot, and then down imaging, and I have my mapping. Now, if you really don't need your mapping, if you don't want to, this is just normally how I have it set up. If you want a bigger screen, you can definitely just use down imaging and side imaging, or if you want, just use total side imaging or just down imaging. It's whatever your preference is. But I like to see a little bit of what's below, exactly blown up a little more on down imaging, and then I like to be able to see left and right with side imaging. So, do some cruising here. You can see over here, it's a little bit of a brush pile. You've got some rocks scattered. There's a big limb or a big stick laying on the bottom. And this time of the year, you gotta always be watching for people swimming and stuff like that off the end of their docks. You can't get too zoned in on your unit that you run somebody over. That would be no good. All right, here's some brush right here. So you got 2 brush piles, 3 brush piles, and they're not very big, and these are in just a few feet of water. They're only in 5 foot of water, so they're actually pretty small piles. But that's kind of what I'm looking for in front of these docks, and that's actually in front of that dock right there with the kind of brown orange supports. As you can see, it's kind of a little do-nothing dock. Doesn't look like much, but you got a couple brush piles out in front of it. Okay, now I want to show you this. Here is a little bit of a bottom change right here. You can see it goes from pretty mucky bottom, same depth, but it goes from a much softer, darker blue. See how much brighter this gets right here? That is an indication of a bottom change. So you're going from mud to rock, pretty hard rock too, like not just little bitty mixed in rock. Like that's pretty rocky. And then here is actually a brush pile, so you can see this one actually looks to be pretty wide. I'll show you another example here of a bottom composition change. You can see it already big time. So basically you've got a very soft mud bottom here, and then up here you have a very hard rock bottom. You got a very small little brush pile there. That's all you need though. I know some people they get caught up on, you know, looking for this big almighty perfect pile that you see on the owner's manual or on the box, you know, the marketing. When that's all you're looking for right there is a little blip. Sometimes that can hold the biggest fish. So don't get too caught up in trying to get, oh, the perfect picture, or I can count the fish, you know, in the brush pile, all that type of stuff. That's cool. You can fine tune your unit and really get good detail if you go over at the right angle and you know, make multiple passes. But you know, as really, if you can interpret what you're seeing on the screen, that's all that matters. If you can interpret it and you have an understanding of what's going on and what you're seeing, that's more important than you know, having just a perfect picture and a perfect screen. So that's basically what I'm looking for here at Lake the Ozarks Fishing Docks. One thing I did not talk about is the location and breaking down, you know, sections of the lake or coves. So I generally do like the first third, second third, and then the last third. It depends on the time of the year. If it's transitional period, you know, you need to kind of figure out where they're at. Like today, for example, I can only catch them in the last like 5 docks. I go to the back of a cove, back of a creek. This is like 5 docks. If I went past that, I wasn't really catching them. I might catch one straggler, but if I knew if I went over to the next pocket or the next cove and went to the back and did the last 5 docks, I was gonna get a bite or catch a fish. So things like that could just help simplify the pattern a little bit more, or docks in general. So don't be intimidated by them. They're everywhere, but just know if you start fishing and kind of have a little bit of a systematic approach, you can break down, you know, the lake, and then once you get something going on, you'd be really surprised how patternable Lake the Ozarks is. There's so many areas that set up just the same, and you just get your little pattern going, and you run over a cove, you run over 2 coves, and you start applying it and you start catching fish. So hopefully that helps you break down docks a little bit more. Maybe you hate fishing docks because you're not good at them. Maybe you just are not a fan of it in general, even if you can catch fish on them. But you know, they're everywhere. You may as well take advantage of them. There's fish on them year round, so you may as well learn how to fish them here, and it can bring you a lot more success and put more fish in the boat. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned for some more videos, guys. Thanks.